Hey everybody, JC here with another TNI toy review. And today we're going to take a look at the new DC Collectibles 7-inch Arkham Origins Deathstroke figure. This is part of DC Collectibles' second series of figures based on the Arkham Origins video game. And just like with the first series, most of the figures come in this blister packaging. With the Batman's logo up at the top, and then you clearly have the figure displayed in the packaging with its accessories, and then down below that you have the Arkham Origins name, the name of the character, in this case Deathstroke, and then an indication that this is Series 2. Now I say most of the figures come in the blister packaging because, like in the first series where we had one larger figure that came in a box package, this wave is the same way. We've got one figure that's basically a bit larger scale than the rest of the figures, and that would be Killer Croc. And Killer Croc, like in the first series, the bigger figure is the same price, at least at my comic shop. It was the same price. Now these figures are running about $25, so they are a bit more expensive than traditional DC Collectibles, which I think still run around $20, $21, $22. So these are a little bit more expensive, but at least the larger scale figure is not any more expensive than the rest of the figures in the wave. Okay, so let's get this figure open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. And right off, I gotta say kudos to DC Collectibles for giving us a really good figure with this Deathstroke. The details with the paint apps, the sculpt, are fantastic, and it even has pretty good articulation. So I really gotta give my hats off to DC Collectibles for really, going full out on this figure. The detailing with the paint is incredible. From the mask, you can see that you can actually see his eyeball on the one eye. You can see under the mask, which is really cool. Zoom in here so you can see it. So just really nice detail. And then like all throughout the outfit, he's got all these scratches and dings and everything. This video game version of his costume is a much more kind of armor type costume, and so they've really done a good job of reflecting that with the paint apps. We've got metallic paints basically all throughout the armor with the blues and the orange, and it just looks really good. It really comes off like right out of the video game. And then he's got like this bandolier around his chest is sculpted on. He's got this belt piece on his waist, which is a separate piece. It's just a rubber piece. It's not removable or anything, but it is a separate piece from the actual figure. And then he's got like pouches sculpted on his legs. He's got his sword sheath, and even that, like, it looks like it's removable, like it's just stuck in the strap, but it's actually molded on there. And I would recommend be careful and don't like pull on it too much, because you could probably break it off if you pulled on it too much. But just again, just tons of detail. He's got these bullets on his one shoulder pad, which look really good. He's got grenades on his belt sculpted on there. So just again, a lot of attention to detail with this figure. Looks really incredible. So for accessories, they also did a pretty good job. He comes with a bow staff, which is just a thin piece of plastic. There's not a lot of detail. You've got like the black handles, and then you've got some silver and gray highlights on it. So again, not a whole lot of detail, but and when I first opened the figure, he held the bow staff pretty well. Now that I've stuck like other larger weapons in his hand, it's kind of opened the fingers up a little bit, so it fits a little bit looser, but still overall he holds it pretty good. And then he comes with the sword. Again, the sword doesn't look too bad. It's got some nice detailings on the handle, with like the leather wrap grip for the handle. It's got a little knob on the end. It seems a little small to me for the figure. I don't know. And then the other thing is, it is a fairly soft plastic that they use with the sword. So like the top handle is just kind of rubbery, and it can kind of bend, so when you stick it in the sheath, and it does fit in the sheath fine, but the handle can look a little crooked sometimes, so just something to be wary of. But overall, I think it looks pretty good. And then finally, he comes with a pistol. He's got a working holster, and the pistol's got pretty good details on it. It's metal silver with black handle, and just some nice sculpting on the gun. So this is probably, I think, his best looking accessory is the gun, and it does fit in as he's got a working holster, which is just a rubber piece attached to the leg, but it fits in pretty good there. So for articulation on this, as I said before, he has pretty good articulation for a DC Collectibles figure. They've given him far more articulation than we normally see. Now, unfortunately, because of the way some of the armor pieces on the costume are sculpted, it still prohibits some of his movement. But again, at least they made the attempt to give him more flexibility, which I really like. So we'll just go over the points real quick. So he's got the head, which he's got a little bit, he can move the head a little bit back. I don't think it's on a hinge joint, I think it's just on a ball joint. So he's got a little bit of back movement, but not a whole lot. But he can look down some. And then he can look left and right without any problem. His shoulders are attached with your standard ball hinge joints, but because these armor pieces, these shoulder pads, on his shoulder are basically, they're glued on. They're separate pieces and they're glued on. You cannot really put the arms out a whole lot. That's about as much out as you can put the arms out because of these pieces. And if you try and force the arms out anymore, you risk basically knocking those pieces off because they're just glued on there. He does have good rotation. They don't affect him rotating his arm at all, but you just want to be wary about trying to put the arms too far out. Now he also has the bicep swivel, and then he's got a single hinged elbow, and then he's got hinged wrists, swivel wrists. So that's a joint you don't normally see on a DC collectible figure. So I really like that they added that hinge and the swivel on the wrists. Now for the midsection, it looks almost like they tried to give him an ab crunch, but it looks like he just has the swivel at the waist. This piece of armor is actually kind of a separate, looks like it's a separate sculpted piece of armor, so there's kind of like a little gap between his abs and his chest, but it doesn't look like, I've looked and tried to push it, so it doesn't really look like he has any kind of ab crunch. Because of the armor pieces, but he does have the swivel at the waist, so you just want to be careful that you don't, when you swivel, you're turning him at the waist, you're not like hitting the sword sheath or anything. But he does have good turn at the waist, and he even has a little bit of rocking. It's not what I would call an actual ab crunch, but he does have a little rocking at the waist there at that midsection joint. Now the legs, again, are your standard ball hinge joints, but again, because of the way the armor pieces are sculpted, he cannot really do the splits very well. That's about as far out as you can get the legs. He does have a thigh swivel, and he can get the leg forward pretty good, and then you can kind of do the leg out and back, which is pretty good. He has double hinged knees, so he's got good bending at the knees. And again, the knee joints are well hidden by the knee pads of the armor, so that's nice. And then he does have hinged ankle pivots. You see the hinge joints, so you can get the good up and down. And he does even have, they're a little tight at first, but he definitely has some ankle pivot there. So again, overall, like I said, very good articulation for a DC collectible figure. And unfortunately, because of the armor, the way it's sculpted and stuff, it does limit some of his movements. He, if it wasn't for the armor pieces, he'd probably have even more, movement, especially like in the arm. So the figure stands just under 7 inches tall. here he is next to DC Collectibles' new 52 Deathstroke figure. So you can see they're about the same height. Now overall, I like this new Deathstroke figure better just because, you know, putting aside whether you like the new 52 look or the Arkham Origins look, I just like the articulation and the detail more on this Arkham Origins figure over the new 52 version. The only thing I like better about the new 52 version is I like how they had done the shoulder pads on this one, so they were actually a hinge joint connected to the rest of the armor, so it didn't really affect the movement of the arm. It would have been, probably you couldn't do that because in the, you know, on the video game these pieces aren't actually connected to his other armor around his neck, whereas here they are. But I do like, that's basically the only thing I like better on the new 52 version is, like I said, with these shoulder pieces on this figure, you're going to have to be very careful when you're like moving the arm around. You're going to have a tendency to want to put the arms out, and you know, because they're just glued in there, they're going to be really easy to knock those pieces off. And then here he is next to the first wave Arkham Origins Batman figure. And again, Batman's a little bit taller basically because of the ears, but for the most part they're about the same size. And then finally, just for a comparison shot, since we've mentioned him before, here he is next to the Mattel 6-inch version of the Deathstroke character from the video game. And again, you know, it's not that the Mattel figure is bad, it's just when you look at the detail with all the scratches and everything, and the metallic paint paint to give it that armor look and everything, the DC Collectibles ones is just hands down a better looking figure. Accessory that this figure did not come with, which would have been kind of cool, is a rifle of some type. However, if you do have that 6-inch Mattel version, you can take the rifle from that one and it works pretty well on this figure. So that's just something to note. I wish they had kind of included a rifle with this one, but like I said, if you have the Mattel one, you can always use the rifle from that one. Okay, so that's my review. Overall, I think this is a great figure. I really like this figure and what DC Collectibles has done with it. I'm not, you know, a huge fan of the Arkham video game figures. I mean, they're nice, but I kind of prefer, for the most part, the comic book versions better. But I really like what they've done with this figure, and I really like seeing the added articulation. I definitely hope that's a trend that continues. And especially if you like the video game figures, I think you're definitely going to want to add this one. This is the only one so far I've opened up in Series 2. Series 2 overall looks like it does have a little bit better articulation than Series 1, but by far this is probably the best figure in the series. Definitely the best figure over any of the figures done in Series 1. And just by looking at them in the package, I would almost say that this is the best figure in Series 1 or 2. But these are hitting comic book shops now, comic and specialty shops. You can find them on your favorite online e-tailer like Big Bad Toy Store. So if you want to pick this up, start looking now. And until next time, I'll check you later.